The newest wave of Innistrad Crimson Vow spoilers have just been revealed, and I have to admit, it's kind of a mixed bag. On one hand, we have some incredible enchantments, but on the other hand, we have an incredibly underwhelming mythic rare to talk about.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The magic historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. My friends, I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered to take a look at another wave of Innistrad Crimson Vow spoilers. As I said, this one's kind of a mixed bag, so let's dive right in. We're going to start out with Catilda the Dawnheart Martyr. Now this card is one of the story spotlight cards, so I am interested to see exactly what's going on with the story in this regard. She is 2 white and 1 for a star spirit warlock. It has flying, lifelink, and protection from vampires. Catilda Dawnheart Martyr's power and toughness are each equal to the number of permanents you control that are spirits and or enchantments. So if you have a creature that is a spirit enchantment, it only counts once, and that is important to note. So overall, I mean, this is an interesting card. It's as beefy as the number of enchantments you have and the number of spirit creatures. It's got Disturb, so we're going to take a look at the other side. The Disturb cost is 2 white and 3. The artwork depicts Catilda in this sort of spirit form, and we know that at the end of the storyline for Innistrad Midnight Hunt, that Catilda had like her essence pulled out of her by Olivia in this one crucial moment of the story. So I'm guessing this is like the revenge that comes as a result of it. But we have, like, obviously, aside from this front with the amazing artwork, I love the artwork, we have the other side, which is Catilda's Rising Dawn. And you can see that she is floating here above the Celestis, or maybe somebody with her essence infused into them. Actually, that is more likely what it is. Looking at the individual in the artwork, that doesn't really look like the same figure. I mean, Catilda's got not the same kind of hairstyle or headdress, right? So this is an enchant creature. I guess this is somebody infused with Catilda's essence. So it's a legendary enchantment, so you can only have one of these in play. It's an enchant creature. Enchanted creature has flying, lifelink, and protection from vampires, and it gets +X/+X, where X is the number of permanents you control that are spirits and or enchantments. So by itself, it's going to give +1/+1 unless you have anything else to boost. And if Catilda's Rising Dawn will be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. And we're going to see there are a number of enchantments that operate in the exact same fashion, being exiled instead of going to the graveyard. Obviously, when you have a Disturb card, you can't really have it. Oh, you know what? It's back to the graveyard. I'll just cast it again. Now, I have to admit, this is a cool enchantment. But does it really feel legendary? Yes, it's legendary in that you need to have Catilda's essence infused into you. But does it really feel like a legendary enchantment? I mean, you've got to have Catilda go to the graveyard, then pay 5 mana for this enchantment. And if your opponent destroys the creature, the enchantment's just gone. There's no inherent protection to stop it from being destroyed, aside from protection from vampires, which obviously only protects from vampires. It's got cool flavor. The artwork's awesome. Somebody infused with her spirit is rising up above a functioning Celestis with what I presume is the coming dawn. So I'm guessing this is where the story like culminates. This is probably a huge moment in the story. I definitely like the artwork and the concept, but the card itself is a little bit underwhelming. Moving on, we've got Mirror Hall Mimic. This is another flip to enchantment card that I actually like a lot more. This one feels really powerful to me. 1 blue and 3 for a 0/0 spirit. Doesn't matter that it's 0/0 though, because its ability is you may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it's also a spirit. So it's just straight up an improvement on Clone. When I started playing Magic, 1 blue and 3 would get you Clone, which is just cast it, copy a creature in play. This one copies a creature in play, but also has the disturb ability, again for 5 mana, this time 2 blue and 3, and then it turns into an enchantment, which I'm in love with. But before we move on to that, I just want to say the artwork is really solid. It's a nice looking sort of Geist that looks like it's wandering down the hall looking for something, and you can see, if you take a look, there's actually a wall of mirrors, and the Mirror Hall Mimic is being reflected in each of them, even though that would be pretty difficult to accomplish based on its positioning, right? And that actually has to do with the flip side, which is Ghastly Mimicry. And this is an enchant creature. Amazing. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted creature, except it's a spirit in addition to its other types. If Ghastly Mimicry would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So yes, this gives you a copy of the creature every single turn. And on top of that, you don't even have to copy your own creature. You can put this enchantment on one of your opponent's creatures and get an extra copy of it every single turn. Man, the value in this is absolutely amazing. The amount of creatures that you can crank out and the dirty shenanigans that you can get into with this feels super strong to me. And the artwork's awesome. You've got this dude looking into the mirror, and this like ghastly undead spirit version of him is looking back with this crazy grin and these light pinpoint eyes, man. This is intense and a very cool card. Moving on! We've got Headless Rider. This is, I think, the second time now that Magic the Gathering has had a Headless Horseman, because there was a Headless Horseman in the Legend set, and I don't think they've done one since. 1 black and 2 for a 3/1 zombie. Whenever Headless Rider or another non-token zombie you control dies, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. The flavor text says, he wanders the moorlands, hoping to one day chop off a head worthy of replacing his own. I love this concept. First of all, Headless Horsemen are a creepy concept, but look at the artwork. You have this spectral being riding a spectral horse. You've got like the light flowing up out, making him feel like a special kind of zombie. And then you've got multiple heads just floating above him, screaming out while ghost energy pours out of their mouths, right? And so, to me, the idea of this is, whenever a creature loses its life, the Headless Rider comes over and hacks off its head and just throws the head up in the air, hoping that it'll be a good match for it, but it never is, and they just end up circling around his head. Maybe every once in a while, one's too rotted and falls away, but they're just circling around his head, and the magic that is a part of that also animates up the body. So you get these zombies, but they're all headless zombies, and the flavor on that is absolutely awesome. Plus, just the value that you get. I mean, obviously, the flavor doesn't 100% work that way when the Headless Rider goes, because it's like, okay, he's not being reanimated by other people, right? So it's like, there's that little bit. But overall, the flavor is really tight. The artwork's awesome. And I like how his lack of head is framed by the moon. That is really cool. Moving on. We've got Eruth, Tormented Prophet. That name is weird. It feels like electronic Ruth. Like, I am the internet Ruth. Anyways, 1 red, 1 blue, and 1 for a 2/4 legendary human wizard. If you would draw a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library instead. You may play those cards this turn. Really solid overall. If you have a ton of mana or another way to play a bunch of spells, this is really, really solid. It essentially is just doubling your card draw on the cheap. Yes, you're not technically drawing them. It's exiling them, and you can only play them that turn. But in a lot of ways, it's going to function as if you're double drawing, and that's really, really good. The flavor text says, she is cursed with visions of monsters and suffering, and all her visions come true. Oh, yay! I can see the future, and the future sucks, and there's nothing we can do about it. Woo! The artwork's awesome, though. Look at her, right? She's all like hunched up in the corner, staring off into the distance, but at the same time, all these demons are flowing around. These are the visions that she's having of the future that's yet to come. Hey, you know what? That flying demon in the back totally gives me the ghosts and goblins, or ghost and ghouls, depending on which one you know. Ghouls and ghosts. They have different names for it. But you're that knight, and you run around, you got spears and axes and stuff, you're throwing them around, jumping over the tombstones. That game was hard, but that little devil in the back totally makes me think of him. All right, so this is a pretty solid card, I gotta say. I like it. Well executed, good flavor, good power. Moving on. We've got Old Rutstein, living in a rut. 1 green, 1 black, and 1 for a 1/4 legendary human peasant. He is a legend! When Old Rutstein enters the battlefield, or at the beginning of your upkeep, mill a card. If a land card is milled this way, create a treasure token. If a creature card is milled this way, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. If a non-creature, non-land card is milled this way, create a blood token. So I like the fact that every time you mill with him, you get a reward. He's always giving you something, either a treasure token, a 1/1 creature, or a blood token. And if you're already playing something that wants to be feeding cards into your graveyard, he feels like he fits in just fine. He's an interesting character. I mean, you look at the artwork, and of the different artworks they have, this one feels the best for this type of creature. He's got this like old, wizened, rotted kind of like bog wizard vibe to him, but he's not a wizard, right? He's just some peasant who is a good job of like rummaging stuff up. I guess he just like fishes through the trash for stuff. But look at that skull ring on his finger. Look at all the little details in the artwork, the scavenged goggles and everything. This definitely gives that concept of somebody who's trying to survive in a dark and unforgiving world. So not too shabby, depending on what you want to do to build around him. I like it. Moving on, we've got Faith-Bound Judge. This one's a weird one. 2 white and 1 for a 4/4 spirit soldier with defender, flying, and vigilance. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Faith-Bound Judge has 2 or fewer judgment counters on it, put a judgment counter on it. As long as it has 3 or more judgment counters on it, it can attack as though it didn't have defender. So it's a 4/4 vigilance flyer, but you can't use it right away. You have to wait 3 turns to get him up and running, at which point you can use him fully, right? Not too shabby overall. Doesn't seem too bad for your mana. The artwork's pretty straightforward. You literally have a flying spirit soldier, and you got all these crazy swords of light that are floating around him that I assume are under his control, where he can just be like, I judge you guilty, and the blades fly in. But apparently he takes time. Apparently he's a judge who likes to spend his time and think. So for the first couple turns he shows up, he's like, and then abruptly, guilty! Right? So that's the concept. Now, the card really gets crazy when we go to the other side of it. So it's got Disturb for 2 white and 5, and turns into this crazy enchantment. Sinner's Judgment. This is an enchant player that says at the beginning of your upkeep, put a judgment counter on Sinner's Judgment. Then, if there are 3 or more judgment counters on it, enchanted player loses the game. If Sinner's Judgment will be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So this is a pretty wild card. If your opponent doesn't have enchantment removal, they're going to have no way to get rid of this. So it's just a 3-turn countdown. Like, it's not exactly an insta-win, but it's insta-win-ish. Do you know what I mean? Because it's got that feeling of absolute inevitability. And I love the fact that the artwork shows the judgment actually taking place. All the light swords slam down into the sinner that has been judged unworthy. And if you and me are playing a game, you're that demon there, and all them swords are jamming into you. It's a get wrecked. It's such a cool card, man. These instant win cards are nutty. Admittedly, it costs a lot of mana to play. You have to spend 7 mana, and they do have a 3-turn clock. But ultimately, it is a very feel-good situation where it's like, I pronounce doom upon you. Guilty. You have 3 turns to make peace with your god. I love it. That's so cool. Moving on. We have what to me seems to be an absolutely underwhelming and disappointing mythic. Feel free to tell me if you think I'm wrong on this one. But when I looked at it, I went, am I missing something? Why is this guy mythic? 2 black and 4 for a 4/4 menace zombie. So it's 6 mana to cast this guy. And he's a 4/4 menace. When he enters the battlefield or dies, You exile another card from a graveyard, and when you do, remove X counters from target permanent where X is the mana value of the exiled card. Or target creature an opponent controls gets -X until end of turn, where X is the mana value of the exiled card. So when I looked at this, my brain, I even tried improving both of these abilities to see if it felt mythic then. So basically, I changed the wording to say, when it dies or comes into play, either the first ability says remove X counters from target permanent, right? And to me, that says it's useful to get rid of a planeswalker. That is almost always what you're going to do with it. There may be some other situations where you want to remove counters from a creature. I don't know, maybe one of the adversaries from Midnight Hunt. But overall, I feel like planeswalkers are going to be the main target of this, right? So the first ability may as well just say, destroy target planeswalker. And the second ability may as well just say, destroy target creature, right? So even if this didn't exile a card from the graveyard and was 6 mana for a 4/4 menace, when it comes into play, destroy target planeswalker or destroy target creature, or when it dies, destroy target planeswalker, destroy target creature. That barely feels good enough at 6 mana to be a mythic, and even feels like an underwhelming mythic then. But these abilities are weaker versions of that require you to exile cards from the graveyard. So you have to have things to feed to this guy. Like, if you want to be able to take out your opponent's 6/6 dragon, there has to be a card in somebody's graveyard that costs at least 6. And if there isn't, this guy just can't handle the dragon. So to me, it just feels like really underwhelming. It doesn't have that mythic pop where when you look at it, whoa, this guy's incredible. He's going to have genuine board impact. I feel like he may as well just be a rare. And the fact that he's mythic rare is confusing to me. The artwork is pretty solid, though. I do like that. You got him he's at a cemetery. Like, what's up, man? I'm here to dig up some bodies. I like desecrating cemeteries. Pretty straightforward. I mean, he does look intense with the whole spear driven through him, butcher's knife stuck into his shoulder, other spikes, spears and stuff coming out of him. He's been in some serious battle action, but ultimately, how do you justify this being mythic rare? Really? Look at this and tell me why this is mythic rare. And I'm willing to admit that I may be wrong and undervaluing this card, but it really does feel meh when I read it. Moving on, we've got Dying to Serve. This, on the other hand, is absolutely amazing to me. 1 black and 2 for an enchantment that says, whenever you discard 1 or more cards, create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. This ability triggers only once each turn. I mean, this card would be absolutely insanely broken if it didn't have that triggering only once a turn sort of thing. But it just feels like the amount of value that you're going to get out of this enchantment over time is going to be huge. Especially if you're playing a heavy discard strategy. If you're using things like, for example, the new blood counters. Blood counters are pay 1 mana, tap it, sacrifice it, discard a card. Those are all the cost to draw a card, right? So basically, this will let you turn every blood token into a 2/2 zombie, 1 by 1. And it doesn't specifically require that it be your turn to do this. It does say it triggers only once each turn, but it does trigger once each turn. So if you're playing in a commander game, you've got 4 opportunities every time it goes around the board. And even just in a 2-player game, you can just be cranking out these zombies. There's a lot of just feed stuff into the fire style cards in black in terms of sacrifice this for gain. We've got multiple multiple instants right now that let you sack creatures to draw multiple cards. So you can just be feeding these zombies, these tokens like they're nothing, into the graveyard, drawing cards off them, getting more cards to fuel even more zombies. It feels like a really useful resource generator that will build over time. And it also feels like one of those enchantments that's just going to be more valued by people over time. And the flavor concept behind it is awesome too, right? Because Innistrad Crimson Vow is this crazy wedding that they're doing. And we're seeing all these vampires and planeswalkers like Chandra in their finery. And so here we have zombies that are dying to serve. They've literally been turned into zombies specifically to make them servants. And you have to admire the first zombie here in the front is very very straight backed and prim and proper. When you see zombies a lot of the time, they're like hunched forward, like, yeah, shuffling. These ones probably have stronger, more articulated movement as they wander around through the gathered nobles with their offerings. You know, they're the caterers. They're the caterers, and they have these goblets full of blood, man. So at an instant, like, far off glance, you might just be, oh, look, it's a bunch of noblemen servants that are ready to bring out the nourishment for the guests. And then when you get a closer view, you're like, whoa, that's intense, man. You don't normally see zombies dressed up in really nice clothing. Like, most of these zombies look fairly presentable. Admittedly, the one on the right behind the guy in the front, it does look a little, yeah, I don't know how you made the front ranks, bro. But the main lead zombie does actually have that kind of, the kind of look you would expect from a high-level butler or something, staring down guests. Should I allow you entry? Either way, I love this card. Anyhow, that wraps up all the spoilers. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Big thank you to all my patrons, and I'm going to leave a link to the playlist of all my Innistrad spoiler videos and a link to my newest Innistrad lore video. So choose what you want to watch and enjoy. See you next time.